The bedroom window was still open when police arrived. Inside, two 12-year-old girls sat trembling, their hands still bound with rope. Their friend Polly was gone. He said if we moved, he would hurt us, one whispered to the officer. He took her through the window. What those girls didn't know was that the man who shattered their sleepover had been walking free for months, despite a history that should have kept him locked away forever. What they couldn't have imagined was that police would actually encounter him that same night, just miles away from where Polly was being held. And then, they let him go. This single decision would haunt investigators, devastate a family, and ultimately change laws across America. But it was already too late for Polly Klaas. Her story begins with laughter and dreams of Broadway. It ends with a confession that shocked a nation and a courtroom outburst so vile it left grown men in tears. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened to Polly could have happened to anyone. And what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. The clock was already ticking. Polly had less than 12 hours left. Polly Hannah Klaas was everything a 12-year-old should be. Born on January 3rd, 1981, she lived in the quiet town of Petaluma, California, a place where neighbors knew each other's names and children rode their bikes until sunset. Polly had stars in her eyes. She dreamed of Broadway, spent hours rehearsing lines, and lit up every room she entered. Her teachers described her as compassionate beyond her years. Her friends adored her infectious laugh. Her parents, Mark and Eve, watched with pride as their daughter blossomed into a confident, caring young woman. The Klaas home on 4th Street was a sanctuary of creativity and warmth. Polly's bedroom was her stage, filled with costumes, scripts, and the dreams of a girl who believed the world was full of possibilities. On that October evening, she had invited two close friends for a sleepover. They were planning to stay up late, share secrets, and play dress-up with Polly's collection of colorful outfits. It was supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be safe. But evil doesn't knock. And sometimes, it slips through an unlocked window. October 1st, 1993, 10:28 p.m., Polly's bedroom glowed with the soft light of a bedside lamp. The three girls had spent the evening trying on different outfits, giggling as they posed in front of the mirror. Kate and Jillian, Polly's two best friends, were finally settling down for the night when they heard it, a soft scratching sound at the window. "Did you guys hear that?" Polly whispered, pausing mid-sentence. Before anyone could answer, a figure appeared at the bedroom window. A man, tall and imposing, was climbing through the frame with disturbing calm. In his hand, the glint of a knife caught the lamplight. The girls froze. "Don't move," he said, his voice eerily steady. "Don't scream, and nobody gets hurt." Kate would later tell police that time seemed to stop. The man moved through their safe space like he belonged there, like he had done this before. He pulled rope from his pocket, rope he had brought with him, rope that suggested this was no random act. "Lie down on the floor," he commanded. Face down. Now, the two friends obeyed, their hearts pounding so hard they could barely breathe. They felt the rope tighten around their wrists as he bound their hands behind their backs. Through their terror, they could hear Polly's shaky breathing nearby. "Please," Polly said softly. "Please don't hurt my friends." Even in her own moment of terror, she was thinking of others. It was so perfectly Polly, the girl who always put everyone else first. The intruder finished tying the girls and stood up. What happened next would replay in their minds for decades. He reached down, took Polly by the arm, and pulled her toward the window. "Where are you taking me?" Polly asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't answer. Kate and Jillian lay motionless on the floor, listening as footsteps moved toward the window. They heard the soft thud of someone climbing out, then silence. The kind of that screams louder than any sound. Minutes passed. Maybe 5, maybe 10. Time had lost all meaning. Finally, Kate worked her hands free and ran to wake Polly's mother, Eve. "Someone took Polly," she gasped. "A man came through the window and took her." Eve's world shattered in that instant. She dialed 911 with trembling fingers, her voice breaking as she tried to explain the impossible, that her daughter had been stolen from her own bedroom in their safe neighborhood during what should have been an innocent sleepover. The first officers arrived within minutes, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they searched the yard. The bedroom window remained open, cool October air drifting through the space where a predator had entered and a child had vanished. By 11 p.m., Petaluma police had launched a massive search. Dogs were brought in to track Polly's scent. Neighbors emerged from their homes with flashlights, ready to search every corner of their community. The local media picked up the story by midnight. But Polly was already gone, somewhere in the California darkness with a man whose intentions nobody wanted to imagine. What the search teams didn't know was that their window of opportunity was closing fast. What they couldn't have predicted was that the very person they were hunting would soon cross paths with law enforcement and walk away free. The next few hours would determine whether Polly Klaas would ever see another sunrise. And in a cruel twist of fate, those hours would reveal just how close they came to saving her life. Comment below if you think you could have spotted the warning signs. And hit that like button. This story is about to take a turn that will leave you speechless. While thousands of volunteers combed through Petaluma searching for Polly, the unthinkable was happening just miles away. At exactly 11:45 p.m., barely an hour after Polly disappeared, Deputy Sheriff Mike Rankin was patrolling a rural area near Pythian Road when he spotted something unusual. A sedan was stuck in a ditch, its driver standing nearby in the darkness. The man appeared calm, almost casual. He told Deputy Rankin that he'd been drinking at a nearby bar and had accidentally driven off the road. His name, he said, was Richard Allen Davis. What Deputy Rankin didn't know was that he was standing face-to-face with Polly's abductor. What he couldn't have imagined was that Polly herself was hidden somewhere nearby, possibly still alive, possibly listening to their conversation through the October night. Davis was polite, cooperative. He didn't match the initial description given by the girls. They had described someone younger, different clothing, different build. In the chaos and trauma of those terrifying minutes, some details had gotten confused. So Deputy Rankin did what any reasonable officer would do. He helped Davis get his car out of the ditch, ran a quick check for warrants, and when nothing came up immediately, he let him drive away. Richard Allen Davis disappeared back into the night, taking his secret with him. But the location where Davis was found would later prove crucial. That stretch of Pythian Road bordered the property of Dana Jaffe, a local resident who had called police earlier that evening about a suspicious man on her land. She had seen someone near her barn, someone who seemed to be hiding something. The pieces were all there. Davis stuck in a ditch. Dana Jaffe's property. A scared child somewhere in the darkness. If Deputy Rankin had searched the area more thoroughly, if the description had been more accurate, if Davis had been held just a few hours longer for questioning. But none of that happened. Instead, Davis drove home that night, believing he had gotten away with the perfect crime. He had no idea that he had left behind a crucial piece of evidence in Polly's bedroom, evidence that would eventually lead investigators straight to his door. What Davis also didn't realize was that his brief encounter with Deputy Rankin had been documented, time-stamped, recorded in a police report that would later become the most damning piece of evidence against him. The man who thought he was invisible had actually left a trail of breadcrumbs. And that trail was about to lead investigators on a chase that would expose the most heartbreaking missed opportunity in California criminal history. The search for Polly Klaas became the largest missing child investigation in California history. Within 24 hours, the case had captured national attention, transforming a quiet wine country town into the epicenter of every parent's worst nightmare. Eve Nickel and Mark Klaas, Polly's divorced parents, put aside their differences to focus on one thing: bringing their daughter home. Mark, a car salesman with no media experience, found himself thrust into the spotlight, pleading with reporters and volunteers to keep searching, keep believing, Keep hoping. She's out there somewhere, he told the cameras, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. And we're going to find her. The Polly Klaas Search Center was established in downtown Petaluma, becoming a hub of desperate activity. Celebrities began arriving to help. Winona Ryder, who had grown up in Petaluma, returned to her hometown to support the search efforts. Her presence brought even more media attention, which the family hoped would keep Polly's face in front of millions of viewers. But behind the scenes, investigators were following a more methodical approach. The crime scene team had spent hours in Polly's bedroom, dusting for fingerprints, collecting fiber evidence, photographing every inch of the space. They found something significant, a partial palm print on the wooden window frame. It was clear, distinct, and definitely not from anyone who lived in the house. The two surviving girls, Kate and Jillian, worked with sketch artists to create a composite of the intruder. The process was traumatic, asking children to relive their worst nightmare, but their courage provided investigators with their first real lead. Meanwhile, the FBI had joined the investigation, bringing with them a psychological profile of the likely suspect. The profiler painted a picture of someone with a history of violence, someone who had probably committed similar crimes before, someone who was familiar with the area. As days turned to weeks, the search expanded beyond Petaluma. Volunteers distributed flyers across Northern California. Police followed up on hundreds of tips, each one carrying the hope that it might be the breakthrough they desperately needed. But the investigation hit its first major roadblock when they discovered Dana Jaffe's report from the night of the abduction. She had called police about a suspicious man on her property around the same time Polly disappeared. When investigators visited her property weeks later, they were shocked by what they found. Items of clothing, pieces of rope, signs that someone had been there recently, someone who had been in a hurry. Then came the revelation that would haunt everyone involved in the case. Police records showed that an officer had encountered a man named Richard Allen Davis on Pythian Road that very night, just yards from where the evidence was discovered. Deputy Rankin was devastated when he learned the truth. "I helped him get his car out of the ditch," he told investigators, his voice breaking. "I was right there. She might have been right there." The search for Richard Allen Davis began immediately. But Davis had already made a crucial mistake that would lead to his downfall. In late November, Davis was arrested on unrelated charges, a parole violation that had nothing to do with Polly's case. While he sat in jail, investigators were methodically processing evidence from the crime scene. The palm print from Polly's bedroom window was run through every database available. When it finally matched a print on file for Richard Allen Davis, Detective Mike Meese felt his heart skip a beat. They had him, but having a suspect and proving guilt were two different things. Davis had been through the system before. He knew how to stay quiet, how to lawyer up, how to make investigators work for every piece of evidence. The interrogation of Richard Allen Davis lasted for hours. He sat across from detectives claiming innocence, spinning elaborate stories about his whereabouts on October 1st. He was calm, calculating, almost cocky in denials. But investigators had more than just the palm print. Fiber evidence from Polly's bedroom matched clothing found at the scene on Pythian Road. The rope used to tie up the girls matched rope found on Davis's property. So far, police had a suspect, evidence linking him to the crime scene, and proof he had been in the area that night. Yet the location of Polly remained unknown, and without a body, prosecutors knew conviction would be challenging. The breakthrough came when Detective Meese tried a different approach during questioning. Instead of focusing on guilt or innocence, he appealed to Davis's ego, suggesting that only someone very clever could have planned such an elaborate crime. Davis began to talk. At first, he admitted only to being in the area that night. Then he acknowledged knowing about the house on 4th Street. Finally, after hours of careful questioning, he made the admission that would seal his fate and break the hearts of everyone who had been hoping for a different ending. "I can show you where she is," he said quietly. The search was over. But for the Klaas family, the real nightmare was just beginning. December 4th, 1993. Richard Allen Davis led investigators to a remote hillside near Cloverdale, 50 miles north of Petaluma. The area was desolate, hidden from any road, surrounded by thick brush that would have concealed secrets for decades. "She's over there," Davis said, pointing toward a shallow depression in the earth. What investigators found would haunt them forever. Polly had been there for 2 months, alone in the wilderness, while thousands of people searched desperately for any sign of her. The medical examiner's report confirmed what everyone feared, but no one wanted to accept. Polly had lost her life within hours of her abduction. All those weeks of searching, all those prayers and vigils, all that hope, it had been too late from the very beginning. But Davis wasn't finished inflicting pain. During his trial, he showed no remorse. He smirked at testimony. He doodled on legal papers while victim impact statements were read. And then, during sentencing, he delivered a final blow that left the courtroom in stunned silence. "The main reason I know I did not attempt anything on that night with Polly is because of a statement she made to me while walking her up the embankment. She said, 'Just don't do me like my dad.'" Mark Klaas lunged toward the defendant's table before being restrained. The statement was almost certainly false, a final act of cruelty designed to torture a grieving father. But it revealed the true nature of the man who had destroyed so many lives. Richard Allen Davis was sentenced to end his life on death row at San Quentin, where he remains today. But Polly's legacy extended far beyond that courtroom. Her case became the catalyst for California's 3 strikes law, designed to keep repeat violent offenders behind bars. The Polly Klaas Foundation was established to help find missing children across America. Her story changed how law enforcement responds to child abductions nationwide. Most importantly, Polly's memory lives on in the hearts of everyone who knew her, and in the thousands of people who searched for her, hoped for her, and refused to give up until the truth was found. Some stories end with justice, others end with change. Polly's story gave us both. Subscribe now and click on the video appearing on your screen to learn about another case that changed America forever. And remember, in a world that can sometimes feel dark, there are always people willing to search for the light.